Hey guys, so I'm using this project again. I got a lot of questions about how I made the hardware for this garment. So I made one here with my logo on it, and I made a cute little heart hardware on the back here. So I figured I would take the time and make a video to show you how I did it. Okay, so first I'm going to start with the heart hardware. This is just a screenshot I took from a Google search. I need a pattern piece to put it on. And let's drag it on. And then I'm just going to trace this off real quick. And then I'm going to bring the particle distance down. And I brought it down to a particle distance of 1. And I'm going to convert these to curve points. And if you look at the mesh and you look at the pattern piece, although it's really small, the particle distance, the amount of actual vertices isn't that big. And this is a fresh file. It's not gonna slow down your computer too much. You can always go to a higher particle distance if you are having trouble, but it should be okay. And this gets you a nicer, smoother looking trim, because I didn't show it actually. If I go back to the bigger particle distance and you look at it in the 3D viewer over here, even in the 2D viewer, you can see that it's pretty blocky. So we need to come down. If you come down to 5, it's still looking pretty blocky, especially in 3D. And then if you come down to 1, I think it's looking pretty good. So just work with a fresh file, and you can work with a really small particle distance. So then we're going to convert those to curve points. And then one other thing that I like to do is make this a quad. Because again, when we look at the mesh, see how nice and smooth it looks around the corners now? When it's triangle, it's having a lot more trouble to create these lines around the corners, especially when we add our internal line, which we're going to do next. So let's go back to quad. It also reduces the amount of faces and vertices you have. So the amount of particles, it makes your file a little bit lighter. So we go back to front textured surface, and then we're going to unfold symmetric editing with sewing, and then we are going to offset as internal line. And go with 0.1 for now, and we can modify the thickness later. Okay, now we're going to convert this to a whole, which we can't do actually right now. You have to remove linked editing. And then when you select your internal lines, actually you still won't get it. There's no convert to whole here, because the first thing you need to do is join these lines. Oops. Join overlapping points, and same thing down here. Join overlapping points. Now you can convert it to a whole. So that's the beginning of our heart hardware. And the next thing we're going to do is give it some additional thickness rendering. So let's try 2. So it's still a little bit blocky. You can come down to 0.8. That's the lowest you can go in your particle distance. But that's pretty much the best you can do. I can try and make this a little bit thinner. If I select just the hole on the inside, double click, and then stretch it out a little more, I can make it a little bit thinner, which gives it a little bit more of a rounded profile as well. But that's you're just sort of hitting the limitations of the program. So when you go to render, it doesn't show up that much. You can see it looks a lot smoother in the render, and oftentimes you're not zooming in on your hardware this closely. And once it's on a garment, that detail won't be very apparent. Okay, so that's basically how I made my heart hardware. And once you're happy with the shape of it and how it looks, you can change the material. So you can come over to the fabric that's applied to it and then change it to a metal. So now we have a metal look. And if you want to change the color, same thing, grab the fabric and then change it to a gold. If you're looking for gold, something like this. That's kind of bronzy, so something a little bit lighter, maybe like this, or this one. apply and close. And so once you're happy with the color of it, if you want to reduce the amount of shine on it as well, you can select your fabric and then come down to find the metalness map on it. Metalness, reflection, roughness, and reflection intensity. You can play with all of these until you find something that you like. So maybe we want it a little bit duller and we want it a little less reflective, and maybe we want it, maybe we'll keep the metalness maxed out. And so that's basically it. That's pretty simple. You can create any kind of hardware that you like with that method. You can right click on it in the 3D window and convert it to a trim. If you go to convert to trim, you will see that it disappears in your 3D window, and now you can use this as a trim. And I'll show you how to do this. I'll show you how I apply it to a garment a little later on in this video. One thing I would recommend, I'm going to Control Z and bring it back, is that you'll notice the pattern piece goes away and you're left with the trim. So if you want to save your work, you just make a copy of it and paste it over here. So now when you convert this to a trim, you'll still have the original version of it. And you can save this file out separately, so you can come back and modify it if you ever want to, or you can just archive it if you're working with it in your file and kind of keep it there on the side while you're working on your garment. So that is the heart hardware. Okay, next for the logo, we are going to create a pattern piece to start with. And then in my graphic, I have my logo this time. You just have to make sure it either has to be on a white or transparent background. And then let's make the pattern piece bigger to fit onto this. Okay, now I'm going to trace as internal shape. Oops. And then let's get rid of the graphic. Oh, graphic. We can just delete it. Now we are going to convert all of these to holes. I'm also going to bring the particle distance down to 1. And then for these letters with the internal shape, we are going to select it. Oops, wrong one. And we're going to clone as pattern with sewing. Now those internal pieces are all over the place. So what we're going to do is just select them all and then right click and reset 2D arrangement. And then everything will be in the right place. So that's the beginning of it. And then the other thing you need to do is layer clone under. And then now let's get rid of the internal lines. Oh shoot, before you do that, you have to remove linked editing. And then now get rid of the internal lines. Now in your 3D window, you don't ever need to simulate this because you're going to turn it into a trim. What you're going to do is actually increase the additional thickness rendering of the back piece here. Just try 2, and then I'm going to just move it forward a little bit so that it's covering it. And this one as well, you can increase the additional thickness rendering. And that is how I create my sort of stamped logo. Again, you can change the fabric to a metal. And then we can leave this one as silver. And then, so that's all there is to that. You can do this with maps, normal maps and displacement maps as well, but I just find that I get a cleaner and easier look with this one. So next I will show you how to apply it to a garment. All right, so the last thing you have to do as well is just convert to trim. And it will disappear in your 2D window, and it will just be a trim in your 3D window that you can use as a trim now. So then you can save as a trim wherever you need it to go. And when you're working in your final garment file, you can open as a trim, and I will show you how to do that next. Okay, so now we're ready to bring our trims into our file. So I do a few things to prep the file to bring the trims in before I actually start working with them. So let's start with the heart on the back here. So I have this strap or an elastic that goes around the waist. And then I created this little piece that is an invisible piece of fabric, and it attaches to the strap, to both sides of the strap. So the straps are actually sewn to something. There's no gap in them, and it just makes the whole file a lot more stable. And then I also, for the hardware on the side here, I just have this, it's just another piece of fabric sewn onto the strap right here, and then this back part of it is just another piece of fabric sewn on underneath. And then basically what I do for these sliders is the same thing that I'm going to show you right now on how I bring the heart in. Okay, so let's bring the heart into our file. I actually have it over here in my trim tab already, but I just want to show you in my library. I created a folder on my computer that's just called 3D assets and it's just all of my stuff for Clo goes in here. And then I have it organized similar to the way Clo has theirs organized. So these are all the assets, that my own personal assets that I've created in Clo. I have a folder called hardware here, and then I have a few different trims that I've created. I also have a folder of project files so that if I need to go back and modify these trims, I can go there. And I also have OBJs in here as well. So to bring in your heart, you can either double click and it will bring it over here into your object browser, but it's not actually in your file yet. You can also drag and drop it into your file. And when you do that, it will just drop it where you placed it, or you can bring it in from your object browser and then slide it over. And then if your trim is up, the reason why you would do this is because if your trim ever comes in and you don't know where it went, sometimes it's inside the avatar or in some random spot, or the trim is just so small that you can't find it. If you open it like this, you have the option to set the position to 0, 0 or the original. Original might place it where like somewhere where you just can't find it. So if you reset it to 0, 0 and then select open, it'll be down here at the bottom center of your file. So we can delete that one, and we can delete these extras. We don't need all of these. Okay, so there's our heart hardware. Now to place it, you can just use Gizmo and spin it around to where you want it to go and kind of like figure out how to get there, which is super inefficient. So the better way of doing that is to select your trim, use the glue bottle, and bring it to where you want it to be placed. Now, when you select that trim, the glue bottle is actually gluing from the point that you selected. So your picking point, that blue dot that you get, wherever you select from is where the trim is going to rotate from. And it's also where it's going to glue. So we actually want this heart to glue underneath this strap, not on top of it. So we're just going to hide that strap for now. But when I hide the strap, the heart is already glued onto it. So I have to unglue the heart. Now I can hide the strap. Now I can glue the heart onto this part of the strap. And then I can bring the strap back and it's in a reasonable place. And then you just fiddle with it until you get it where you want it to look good. which can be super finicky, which is why I do this as the very last step of working with my file. And please, by all means, if anybody has a better way of doing this, let me know. I would be super excited to hear about it. And it depends on how you're using the file too. Like if you're not going to zoom in on your trim and you don't want to like show it as a detail, then there's no point in going through all this. Okay, so I'm pretty happy with how that looks. It'll definitely show up okay when I do my render. We can get a render preview of it here. Oh, we lost our other hardware, but there you go. That's what it looks like. It looks like the middle of this is pink for some reason. Let's change that back to gold. I don't know when this happened. All right, let's stop rendering and let's talk about the last bit here, which is our hardware. So what I did was I turned the avatar on. I figured out where I wanted to place it, which was probably around there. And then I drew an internal line to mark exactly where I wanted it. And then I grabbed the trim that we created. So this time I'm going to just double click. And then there's the trim. So I'm going to bring it over. And then I'm going to, I'm going to use 0, 0. And then now I know where my trim is. Then I'm going to use the glue bottle and put it up to around where I want it. And then I can hit F to focus in on it a little bit better. And then I'm going to use the glue bottle again to place it. And there you go. There's the trim. And then these are just 2 tiny little top stitches that I made. I drew internal lines and then I added top stitches to them. Okay, so that is all I have for you guys. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know in the comments if it was useful. I also have a couple videos on how I do the hook and eye here, and I have a free hook and eye available, and I'll make sure I link to that below. But that's it. I will catch you next time. Bye.